In a huge, beautiful, and luxurious room, there is a guy with a girl. He is lying on his back, and she is trying to do everything to make him feel better. She touches him tenderly, looks into his eyes, and constantly asks him how he feels so that he can see and know that she cares about him. If he were here now completely alone without her, it would seem that nothing would have changed. But this is not so. He breathes very often and heavily, his face is red and wet, and his eyes are barely open from helplessness. And only sometimes can he answer her something. The girl promised herself and him too that she would not leave here until he got back on his feet. Leaving him here alone is the same as betrayal. No one will help him except her. You can see how he becomes calmer and easier when he looks at her. And for the best effect, she also touches him with her fingertips so that he doesn't get hot from her body temperature. Time passed, and now he was finally able to raise his hand. He stroked the lady's head, and this is already a huge progress in contrast to how he felt just recently. The Holy Virgin came to ease his suffering, and even now, seeing that he was at least conscious, she felt much better. A few months ago, the girl worked in a network of clinics, Matina, the most famous in the country, so she has an idea of how to help people. Moreover, she learned to do massage better than anyone else and climbed the career ladder very quickly. So she cured a huge number of people in just a month, although recovery usually takes several months. And in the best case, in all branches she was the #1 masseuse in terms of requests. Some even called her hands, the hands of a goddess. Naturally, in a society where everyone is ready to step on heads for the sake of success in first place, she had plenty of envious people. One day, she was made to understand that it is not always necessary to completely relieve the client of pain, because at least some businessmen lose a huge amount of revenue when people do not come to them for medicine, but are treated with a simple massage. Also, since she became the best in her field, the number of patients who come to them stopped coming as often as before. They can come a couple of times a month, and before there were more such visits and more tips. To prevent her from arguing with him, the man reminded her that he appreciated her skills and even gave her the biggest bonus for that last time. Such a business policy, neglecting the well-being of patients, is not to her liking, and she cannot put up with it, because she always dreamed of becoming that very massage therapist on whom everyone can rely. At that moment, she was able to say that she did not agree with his opinion, and asked to be allowed to leave and open her own clinic, where everything would be for people and not for money. After these words, the girl immediately left. The man realized that he needed to be gentler with her and began to try to stop her. After all, it turns out that if she opens a clinic nearby, all the clients will go to her, and his business can be closed that same day. As a result, the director decided to try to keep her at any cost. After some time, rumors spread throughout the city that the best massage therapist, when she made a mistake in the procedure and the director paid compensation instead of her, and her hands are goddesses. Generally, self-promotion, which is why everyone started laughing. It all started so suddenly and quickly that the girl gave up and finally realized that this world had long been rotten. As a result, rumors spread not only throughout the clinic, but throughout the industry. Even those who supported her idea of leaving turned away. Only she knew that it was all a lie. And when she tried to explain something, no one believed her because someone had done a very good job with rumors against her as a professional. Now she will not only be unable to open her own business, but her license may even be taken away, which means that after this she will not be able to keep her promise. As a child, the girl was often left alone. Her grandmother, with whom she lived, took her with her to massage sessions, seeing how her grandmother felt better after the sessions. So she decided to become a masseuse to do good and heal people, especially those who do not have the opportunity to pay a lot of money for medicine and especially massage services. But before she could fulfill her dream, unfortunately, her grandmother passed away, and the last words she heard from her were, "Ina, may your hands ease the pain of many people." After which the girl promised that it would be so. Given this whole situation, she could no longer give up this business and had to stay in the clinic, which is what the director was hoping for. She came to his office and asked him to arrange a job somewhere, because now it was impossible to find another job anywhere else. The man doesn't hide that it was his doing. He smiled so sarcastically that it became unpleasant to look at. The only good thing is that he didn't give her some position that all her other colleagues would laugh at. She stayed in her position as a massage therapist. This is understandable because there is no point in finding someone else instead of her. That is why everything turned out this way. Usually she was very happy to hear pleasant words from her patients, but now it is difficult to imagine what could happen to bring a smile to her face again. When the woman left the office, Ina cried and thought that she really wanted to help people, but if she didn't obey, she would lose everything she had. All she dreamed of was helping people with what she could. By continuing to work like this, she seemed to be betraying her dream. And after all these thoughts, the question arises whether it is worth it. When her last tear fell on the floor, a strange pattern appeared under her feet. But the girl has no idea what it is, because it looks more like some kind of hallucinations from the stress she has experienced lately. The girl is not quite aware of what is happening. For her, everything she sees is some kind of illusion, as if in a fog. And she suddenly felt some unfamiliar energy and didn't have time to notice how she suddenly fell through this, as it turned out, portal. She began to be drawn into an unknown space, but she could not see anything because she was afraid to open her eyes. A moment later, she opens them and realizes that she is in another world. This is clearly felt on the energy level, and all these people around called her a holy virgin and said that they were waiting for her. Only these words seemed to her more like a joke, something serious. After that, it seemed to her that she fell asleep or lost consciousness, because it was impossible to explain it in any other way. Ina has no idea who these people are, why they are here, and whether this is some kind of mockery or a joke. She even pinched her cheek on purpose, because that's how you usually check if it's real or not. Suddenly, someone came closer and said that, firstly, at least apologize because no one wanted to scare her. Then the guy introduced himself. His name is Cain. He is a servant of His Highness Gerald, the first prince of the kingdom of Filigard. They performed a ritual to call on her, the saint, so that she would save their prince. Ina doesn't understand anything, not even a word. What kind of kingdom is Filigard? And who is the saint, especially in her guise? They explained to her that the saint was a miracle sent to them by the gods. Their prayers for the salvation of the prince reached the heavens, and once every 100 years they give them the chosen one. Then the guy asked her on behalf of everyone present to show them her holy power, which they were waiting for so much. And then the most interesting part begins. She says that they confused her with someone else, and that it was some kind of mistake. To this she was told that if this was true and she could not help them, then they would have to destroy her. Ina began to understand that this was not a joke and became even more confused about what was going on here. She tells them that they themselves called her here, and accordingly, if they don't need her, they can simply return everything back to how it was. To which this man tells her that according to the laws of summoning, a saint can only return after fulfilling her mission. And if she is not holy, it means that she is an unholy spirit, which they do not need and which they usually get rid of. As unpleasant as it may sound, he must inform her that she has only two options for what to do next. At this point, she is already sweating, blushing, barely remaining conscious and trying to behave normally so that they don't get rid of her prematurely. The man offers her to either prove that she is a saint or die right here, in this very place. After this, she had a completely logical question. How exactly should she prove that she is a saint? Since ancient times, it has been known that the saint carries healing in her hands and everything she touches will be healed. Usually, she had only heard about this in some fairy tales, but she could never imagine that she would encounter it directly, and even more so, that she would have to prove something. These people say that the power of healing is in their hands and even calmed her down, because they realized that they had gone a little too far and should not have spoken like that to the person they themselves had called here, pulling her out of her usual world. And then she had thoughts. Could it be that what she was doing before was somehow connected with the fact that she really had some abilities? If so, then the girl would begin to believe in miracles. Ina says that she understood them and asks to give her a chance to try. Suddenly, she herself did not know about her abilities, and it turns out that she has them, to which the guy says that, of course, she can try to heal him. And then the one who was standing aside asks Cain to be careful, because it seems to him that the girl might be lying, and also her touch might defile him with darkness. Cain asked him to stand quietly aside, because he personally is sure that she will succeed and they did not make a mistake with her. And also for the sake of the prince, he is ready to vouch for hers. Ina has no idea what will happen next. She will lose consciousness from fear now, and it is not a fact that she will come to her senses at all. If healing is what she thinks, she can certainly try, but she has no confidence in the outcome. She does this only so as not to sit idle and not to anger anyone around, because these people are clearly not joking. To begin with, she asked Cain to relax and believe that she could help him, although she herself doubted her words. And then he suddenly gets a strange feeling, and in general, he starts to react to her touch, as if she really has some kind of powers. He felt a flush of heat, but it wasn't too unpleasant for him to let go of her hand to test her abilities to the end. He held back and just began to wait. At some point, he even stopped talking and began to look into space, as if he had experienced heavenly pleasure. Anna asks how he feels, and only after a few minutes he was able to answer that everything is very good. He said it was incredible. His body seemed to be filled with power, which meant that she was a saint, just like he said. Then the guy stood up, took her hands again, and asked her to go immediately to the prince to please and help him. His legs even started shaking from the anticipation that he might get better in some time. The guy is happy, as if for himself. And for the girl, it all looks like she was recognized as a saint because of a simple hand massage that she usually did before the main massage to relax the patients. And in the meantime, before going to the prince, she asked in advance what was bothering him so that she would understand what she would be dealing with. She was told that he had recently been suffering from unexplained headaches, which were even worse at night. He also has sudden attacks of nausea. And the worst thing about all this is that it gets worse and more frequent every year. They have already tried everything they could, but nothing works. So all that remains is to hope for the help of the saint. She was also told that, in addition, sometimes his eyes hurt, and numbness in his limbs deprived him of sleep. If he was not cured soon, the life of His Highness would be in danger. Nausea, numbness, headaches, eye pain. It was very similar to the symptoms she had encountered in patients with neck tension, and she also suddenly had the thought that perhaps saints in this world were the same as doctors in her world. But she could be wrong. Ina said with a smile that, in that case, perhaps, she would be able to do something, and then asked to take her to the prince. Here they are already on the street, walking towards the main entrance. They tell her basic information about His Highness, for example, that he likes to do fencing and is probably right on the court right now. The girl also learned that recently his attacks have been happening even during classes, so he will be immensely happy about her healing. To this she said that she was too embarrassed when people addressed her as a saint, so she asked to be called simply by her first name. The man apologized for his colleague because he was too noisy, to which she told him that it was even good, so she could see that the person was sincere and not silent, and no one knew what he was thinking. After some time, they already approached His Majesty, and Ina is already worried because she does not know how it will all end. She's afraid to disappoint each of them and show herself in a bad light. Although she hadn't really communicated with the man personally, for some reason she had convinced herself in advance that he would be picky and strict with her. Although this cannot be the case initially, because his life depends on her. And in the literal sense of the word, the gentleman was distracted by the Kayin. He took it upon himself to distract him from training, because he thought it was more important. The guy asks who he brought with him because he is very wary of people he doesn't know. They explain to him that she is a saint, and before that he personally turned to the priests to call upon her and save his life. Although the prince does look stern, as she expected, he is very handsome, and this slightly softens the impression of him. His Majesty was surprisingly angry, as if he didn't believe that there was a chance that there was anyone in this world who could at least make him feel better, even for a while. No one understands why he is so serious, because if they listened to him now, they would simply miss a huge and only chance. Khan explains that the master suffers so often that it is simply unbearable to watch it every day. When the girl realized that the prince had not asked anyone to look for him, she felt terribly uncomfortable. But if someone had warned her about this in advance, it would have been easier for her now. Cain sincerely begs the master to allow the saint to show her power, to which the guy says that he does not need it, as if he was just sick and will recover in a couple of days. Ina felt that they themselves would not come to an agreement. She showed courage to ask if she could at least try, and if nothing worked out, then she would not come here anymore. Be that as it may, if she doesn't heal him, she won't be able to return home, and that's the main thing that drives her now. As soon as she approached him or even moved, he perceived it as if she could be dangerous for him. The girl had never seen people resist so much in cases where there was a last chance for salvation, especially when someone forced someone to do it. And his gaze is also very tense, which creates even more dissonance, as if he sees an enemy in front of him and does not fully realize that she may be the only one who will prolong his life. She has never been so scared before. She can't shake the feeling that in this world she can die because of any little thing, simply because everything is arranged. This way here she will either be a respected saint or a nobody. The priest also could not stand aside. He joined them and immediately apologized for interfering. He wants to make it clear that the saint was called from another world, specifically to heal him, until she fulfills her mission, can leave this world and return to her native one. His Majesty says that they, as always, create problems out of thin air. Instead of thanking him that his life is not indifferent to someone, in the end, he agreed to leave her in the palace as an honorary guest. She was very happy at that moment. She felt much better, and in the meantime, The master asks Moses to figure out how to send her back, in case she does her job. Suddenly he started to treat her completely differently. His look was no longer like the one he had at the beginning. The guy even apologized for the arbitrariness of his subordinate. And I also said that until a way was found to return her home, she would live in decent conditions. He would personally supervise this. In fact, now she doesn't even care what happens next. She's only glad that she stayed alive. Now she needs to somehow decide how to heal him and understand if it's even possible. Because if it turns out that she just wasted his time and all these people's time, it will only get worse. It is unlikely that she will be returned back if she turns out to be useless. This is already clear. So she has only one option left, to do everything possible and impossible. If only His Majesty would at least begin to feel better. Not to mention healing him completely. After some time, you can already see precious jewelry on her. She was even given the appropriate clothes for an honored guest. Ina couldn't even imagine that everything would turn out like this. She feels great, and no longer regrets that she took the risk of agreeing to this adventure. Of course, being an honored guest is incredibly nice, but you shouldn't forget why all this is happening. To begin with, she decided to figure out for herself this world, about which she still knows nothing. Not even a word. Inside, she has a feeling that she has found herself in some kind of fairy tale, and all this is not real. It is strange that she can understand the people around her and read, although they definitely do not speak Japanese, which she spoke in her past life. The girl had never studied other languages. It was some kind of magic. Well, if that's the case, then there's nothing to complain about. And in the meantime, there was a knock on her door. Someone apologized for disturbing her and asked if they could come in. Naturally, she couldn't refuse. She was just a little afraid because she had no idea who it was and for what purpose he came. It was the holy priest who came to her, who was also initially against her. He said from the very beginning that he wanted to apologize to her for everything he said earlier. Ina felt that the conversation would not be difficult and was glad. After all, since the person came with such an intention, it means that she now has someone else who is on her side. And then something happened that she didn't expect from him. The guy got down on one knee and started apologizing for his behavior, as expected. She felt very awkward that he bowed his head in front of her, and of course, the girl immediately asked him not to do that. She began to beg him to raise his head, but he refused because his words allegedly offended the saint, and he, as a priest, had no right to do so. He believes that repentance alone is not enough to gain her forgiveness, so he is ready to do whatever she orders. Even if she demands that he leave the kingdom, he will do it. The lady didn't think it would come to this. She's trying to think of what to tell him so that he understands that everything is okay, and she doesn't hold a grudge against him, not a bit. And then she had an idea from which both she and he would benefit, and he would correct his guilt, although this was not necessary. She asked him to tell her about this world and promised that she would forgive him right after that. He certainly didn't expect her to make this wish, but he still agreed because he thought it would be more difficult. Moses explained to her in detail where she was now. He did it with such ease that she remembered everything the first time. The kingdom of Filagard, one of the most prosperous on the continent. It can safely be called one of the best in every sense of the word. People from different other kingdoms come here because there really is a special atmosphere here that you can't find anywhere else. Prince Gerald, heir to the throne, is a favorite of the people for his diplomatic talent and beauty. But now his health is in danger. Although there is summoning magic in this world, they resort to it only in extreme cases. Everything is very strict with this. They treat illnesses and wounds with medicinal herbs because they believe that nothing else in this world can safely heal anything. The girl asks if it is accepted in this world to massage the body when there is pain. Because if not, then she can teach them a lot. After all, massage is done not only for pleasure, but also for health. Moses hears about something like this for the first time. He even became interested in learning more about it, which means that the conversation will be educational for both of them. Ina realized that people of this world are not familiar with such a method. That is why her massage was considered a miracle. This explains a lot. After that, they started talking about how the prince would hardly trust her with his health when it comes to giving a massage. The lady is almost sure of that. Moses begins to explain that the prince initially refused her, not because she was from another world. He is simply a very distrustful person and needs a special approach. There is another very important point. He pathologically avoids women, so it is even more difficult for them to become friends with him. Unfortunately, the reason why he behaves this way towards them is unknown to anyone except himself. After these words, the girl doubts even more that he will let her get close to him. Not to mention that she will touch his body for a long time. And then the guy asked if maybe she could pass on her power to him and apologized in advance if this question seemed too impudent to her. If he heals the prince instead of her, it will count as completing her mission. She thought about it for a bit and even said that maybe they will do it, if only they knew how to arrange it. They came to the conclusion that she simply had to teach him basic techniques that would be easy to remember. Ina started with a hand massage. She said that on the body of each person there are so-called points, by pressing on which you can relieve pain in the body, and very easily and quickly, without special skills. She showed him a point closer to the center of her palm. It calms the nerves, and he immediately checked it on his own sensations. What was his surprise when he began to feel the same thing that she warned him about, and froze in place from the realization that it was so simple. You just need to master some information. He had never felt before that his body was enveloped by an unknown warmth that could not be described in words. He immediately wanted the gentleman to feel the same, and finally be convinced that they only want the best for him, and no one is going to harm him. Moses even went into his thoughts and feelings for a while, then noticed that he stopped listening to her, apologized and explained that he was simply too pleased and lost control of himself. Then he asked her not to pay attention to it and to continue, because now he was listening to her attentively. The girl says that they are done with the palms. Now they can move on to the elbows, which is also not very difficult. She showed him a point that, when pressed, could relieve a person from stomach pain, no matter how severe it was. It was both painful and incredibly pleasant for him. These sensations were mixed together, so that after this he seemed to lose the power of speech. The girl had certainly seen all sorts of things, but for someone to react like that to a regular massage was probably the first time. The thing is that people in this world are really very far from this, and for them, it's something incredible. He had to apologize again, but she understands him very well and tries to react normally because, in his place, she would behave exactly the same as any other person. Only at this rate of learning, it will take longer than she thought, and that's not very good. Meanwhile, she suggested that he not waste his time, asked him to mark a point just above the middle of his left palm and press on it harder. Although at first he was afraid of even this and asked her several times if she was absolutely sure that she would not hurt him. Kane, when I came here, I understood that I would see and learn something new, but I didn't think that it would be so pleasant and exciting at the same time. Like Moses at the beginning, he was very embarrassed because he was not used to receiving such pleasures. At some point, he stopped listening to her altogether. Ina tried to bring him back to reality, and it worked the second time. Although he ignored all the words, for some reason he said that he seemed to have figured it out, although she strongly doubted it. In that case, the girl asked him to try to apply the new knowledge on Moses, and if the priest said that something was wrong, he would have to. The main thing is that the guy didn't use it to his advantage because it was obvious how much he liked what she was doing to him. It would seem that there is nothing to try for, but even in a light hand massage, the guy made a mistake. He pressed in the wrong place and caused pain. The priest even jumped up from his seat. It was so unpleasant he probably didn't even think that such different sensations could be caused by simply pressing on the palm. Now they both understood that massage is not just touching, which anyone can do and call themselves a massage therapist. This business requires experience and knowledge. Moses apparently decided to take revenge. He quickly offered to change places without even hearing if the guy was against it. Started pressing on his hand in the same way he had just pressed on him, and it was terribly unpleasant. Ina understood that it would be difficult with them, but when the guy said that he understood everything, she was happy. But it was not so. They spent a lot of time on training. In the end, nothing changed, and in the end, Ina decided to act independently because it would be faster and safer for everyone around. She found out when the prince usually left his office, caught him in the corridor, and asked for a few minutes of attention. She began to beg to let her at least try to cure him. He would then say thank you and regret that he resisted for so long. But unfortunately, he never changed his mind. The guy apologized and said that he couldn't fulfill her request without even specifying the reason. It's good that she already knows that it's all because he hates women and thinks that she also has some plans for him. At that moment, she thought to herself that it didn't matter whether she was a woman or a man. She had to see it through to the end. The lady promised that it would be painless. One might even say pleasant and not very long, and she would not leave him alone until he agreed whether he liked it or not. The girl deliberately, allegedly, accidentally, touched him to check how much his body was clamped and what he would have to deal with. His whole arm is clenched as if there is not an arm, but some kind of stone under his jacket. This means that the body is clogged with lymph. At some point, the guy even started shaking. He clearly felt bad, and she got scared because, who knows, maybe he'll think it's because of her. She doesn't like that he turned pale so quickly, and he's also finding it hard to breathe with every second. When she sees this in front of her, she herself begins to feel worse. But at this moment, it is important to control yourself. Apparently, the matter is not at all that he does not like women. Rather, he is afraid of them. Ina apologized for only making him feel worse with her appearance, but still insists that they will have to meet again. He responded to this by saying that he would definitely find another way to send her home, and that she would definitely have to do something for this. Finally, the guy asked her not to come near him anymore because he might feel sick even from one look at her. Ina is worried about what to do now. Even though she was given a guarantee that she would return home at the first opportunity, she still wants to be useful, because no one but her will cure him, and she will not be able to live in her world peacefully, knowing how he suffers here. While he goes about his business, he thinks about the fact that the girl is obviously worried because she can't go home after she got here, not by her own will. And he understands that sending her back is his duty. But he doesn't understand one thing. If she disappears from here, it will only get worse for him. At that moment, he had terrible memories from the past that haunt him to this day. Even though that woman who left him with a childhood trauma forever, it seems like she is still present in his life. Every time she appears in dreams or before his eyes, the prince becomes unlike himself. Meanwhile, several days had passed since she had angered Prince Gerald, during which time the girl tried not to cross paths with him so that he would get a little weaned from her. Luckily, she was allowed to move around the castle under the supervision of guards. Ina still dreams of returning to her world, but only after she has completed her mission. She can't stop thinking about the prince's condition after she touched him and felt that he lives every day in such a body. Unable to let go, she constantly returned to check on him from the outside. Sometimes she managed to remain unnoticed, but one day he saw her. And in order not to spoil anyone's mood, he pretended that he hadn't noticed anything. She also noticed that from that day on, Gerald completely shut himself off from everything. He was probably afraid that she would tell everyone what she found out, but he underestimates her. She is not the kind of person who will take advantage of the situation and try to be more interesting at someone else's expense. She is not here for that. She feels very sorry that he lived most of his life like this, which means something needs to be done about it, and quickly. Just at that moment, when she was standing aside and thinking about it, Kane saw her, after which he came up and said hello. He asked if she was here to talk to His Majesty, and she didn't even know what to answer. Last time he called him too unexpectedly, and she is afraid that this time it will be the same, because she came here secretly. And suddenly, he asked what she, as a saint, thinks about the state of His Majesty, because this question has been tormenting him for a very long time. Ina replied that she had been watching him for a long time, and it seemed to her that he was exhausting himself too much. Even in the few days that she has been watching him, he always works from early morning until late at night, not realizing how badly it affects his health. And the worst thing about this whole house is that he is not used to resting and does not specifically devote time to it, supposedly in order to be as productive as possible. Moses joined them, and when the guy said that he definitely needed to change his daily routine, Moses immediately agreed with him and the girl too, because it was obvious and exactly what she was talking about. While they were standing there talking, they didn't notice how the prince saw them and came so close that he heard what they were discussing. The guy turned to Kane and said that if he had time to chill, they could train, which was exactly what Kane didn't want to do. The prince didn't have to wait for an answer. He grabbed his hand and pulled him along, and the subordinate had no choice. He couldn't take his hand back. That would only make things worse. Moses, for some reason, began to apologize for His Highness, to which she replied that everything was fine, because she thought that in his place it was normal to behave like that. It could have been worse. It's lucky that the prince resigned himself and didn't continue to blame others for all his troubles, like some do. Ina decided for herself that she would not force him to continue treatment, but at least she's not going to just leave his trapped body alone until this is resolved. She's not going anywhere from here. No matter how terrible it may sound, the fact remains that death from overwork was not uncommon in her world. So the girl knows firsthand that this can happen to anyone, and at the most unexpected moment, when it seems that everything is fine, and nothing like this can happen, and that these are all some distant stories. If this continues, one day Mr. Gerald will also become part of this statistic, which she would really not like. Accordingly, commas cannot be ignored if you do not want this to happen to the respected prince. Meanwhile, the girl asks why His Highness is so busy. She does not believe that even such a busy man cannot find time to rest. To which Moses tells her that there really are many problems in the kingdom that require his attention. Especially now, when the tribes are on the northern border, there is constant training and military meetings. After these words, everything became clear to her, but It didn't make things any better. It's a pity that she can't do anything about politics. She just had a couple of ideas. Some kid appeared next to her, who was watching her by the tree. Then he came closer, pulled at her clothes so that she would notice him, because when he addressed her, she did not hear it. At first, the girl thought she was imagining things, but then she looked down and saw a boy who was probably lost. It's strange, but it wasn't she who asked him who, but he who asked her this question, to which she doesn't even know how best to answer. He seemed very nice to her. Ina loves children madly, especially those who are kind and polite like him. First, the girl said her name was Ina, and then asked how she could address him, but he reacted somehow strangely. He started touching her face and said that it was different from the faces of those who live here. Ina smiled and said that he was very observant and finally admitted that she came here from the other side. At that moment, Moses comes up. He is clearly unhappy that the boy is here, and he also called him a prince by the name of Luca. At that moment, the girl was very surprised. She was very pleased that in this world the princes were so kind, because usually they have an inflated self-esteem from childhood. Moses wanted to ask him to go somewhere and play, but the child hugged Inu very tightly, showing that he felt good with her and did not want to go anywhere. Just at that moment, Gerald came up and with the same displeased expression asked what he was doing here, because the fact that he was the fifth prince did not give him the right to relax. The boy was upset. It was obvious that he was rarely allowed to communicate with anyone, especially with strangers. Surprisingly, he agreed very quickly, didn't even have time to say goodbye to the girl and left, almost crying. I immediately felt very sorry for him, because he probably doesn't have any friends here with whom he could have fun and not get bored. Besides all this, it was impossible to notice what a terrible posture he had. This indicates that no one is taking care of the child. Most likely for some reason no one cares about him. While Moses and his master were talking about their own things, she did not take her eyes off Luke and noticed that at some point he began to stop and stagger slightly. She ran up to him abruptly, then said that he was too pale and needed to rest urgently. The prince noticed this, and for some reason began to act as if he was also feeling bad. But she only paid attention to Luca. From the outside it looks exactly like that. The guy wanted to scream at first, but then he held back and said the following, so that she wouldn't dare to spoil him. And it sounded so that she even wanted to argue with him, because it was already too much. The prince explains that Luca's grades are falling every day, and he also doesn't complete even half of his daily assignments. After that, he said that he couldn't just leave it like that, and if it ended today, he warned that there would be no mercy. Ina tried to come up with something about it because she couldn't stand to see her child's well-being simply ignored. She wouldn't be surprised if the prince ordered everyone else to behave towards the child just as rudely and strictly as he did. Ina says that the reason he doesn't cope well with his tasks is precisely because he's overexerted. He doesn't have time to rest, and therefore can't be of any use. If nothing is done about it, nothing good will come of it, especially since a child's body is much weaker than an adult's, and it will also be more difficult to cure it. Suddenly, the guy says that she doesn't know anything and shouldn't get involved in this matter at all, to which she told him that, despite the situation, she actually knows more about his health than anyone who has known him since birth. She repeated once again that if things continued like this, the Prince of the Bow would be in danger and it would be impossible to cure him. Surprisingly, I didn't even have to talk to him for long. He silently turned around and said at the end that he doesn't care at all what happens next. She can do as she pleases, especially since he is very busy now. On the one hand, she wanted to speak out. What a bad person he is, and if he is so indifferent to the problems of others, he deserves the same for himself. But on the other hand, it's good that he at least gave her freedom in this regard. The girl thanked him, holding the boy in her arms, and she also felt how pleased he was that someone finally thought about him and took care of him. Meanwhile, the prince is already in his office. He just entered this room and immediately felt how heavy energy fell on him. He is never free here. This room is associated with problems for him because nothing else ever happens here. He felt sick just thinking that at 1 o'clock he had a meeting with the military, at 2 o'clock a meeting with the Minister of the Republic of Holit, and at 3 o'clock an international conference. After all this, he still needed to find time to study international law, although nothing new, because the last few years have passed at the same frantic pace. After the plague 2 years ago, a sea of internal affairs fell on my father. The second prince renounced his right to the throne because of a woman and went abroad. The third prince married a princess from a neighboring country and also left. The fourth prince is studying abroad. The conflict with the northern tribes is escalating, and if war breaks out, he will also have to leave the castle, and then it will be Luke who will have to make important decisions. That's why he made all the teachers teach him what he needed, but it didn't do any good. The guy tried for a long time to figure out what to do. Lately, he just resigned himself to the fact that nothing can be changed. Everything will be as it is. And in the meantime, since Ina has received permission, she is happy to monitor every step and breath of the boy in order to better understand how she can help him. He is very obedient. He is incredibly lucky with that. And he also says that he already feels better, although he is probably just used to embellishing his health so as not to disappoint anyone. Ina explains that his body is exhausted. That's a fact. So he must fully rest for at least one more day. The boy says that if he doesn't study, he won't become like his older brother, and that will be very bad for everyone. Before this, the girl thought that Luca was afraid of such a strict and serious prince. But it turns out that he wants to be someone who is respected by everyone. Like him, just in case. She asked again if he really looked up to his brother, and all this after the way he was treated. Luca starts talking with shining eyes about how strong and cool his brother is, even though he seems too strict, but in his soul he is very kind. The boy feels it. So he studies the written language and laws of the kingdom, and also learns horse riding, though so far only on a donkey. He also says that a real sword like the ones adults have is too heavy for him, but he practices with a wooden one that Gerald gave him. Luca was so carried away that he even said that he trains from morning to evening every day. Although this is different from what the eldest prince said. The girl wondered if this was too much for a small child. With such loads, it was no wonder that he fainted. Ina called him a hard worker, praised him for everything he does to not disappoint his brother, to which he said that, according to Gerald, it is the duty of the royal family to work and study harder than the people so that they can always support them. But even so, he tried very hard. But now he can't even do basic things, which is why he's already giving up. The child had been keeping it to himself all this time, and now he finally spoke out because he felt it was safe with her. The boy was not afraid to say unnecessary words. He was absolutely sincere with her, and she was very pleased with it. Ina touched his hand and asked him to listen carefully to what she was about to tell him. The girl began by saying that where she comes from, there is a saying in medical magic, work hard, rest well and play to your full potential. More does not mean better, but unfortunately, not everyone understands this. It's obvious that he's never heard this before. He looks at her with such eyes as if he just learned the truth. Ina warned that if he destroys his body, he will no longer be able to do anything at all. First of all, it is necessary to create a strong and healthy body, and it is desirable to start doing this as early as possible, and ideally from childhood. While she was holding his hand, he felt how warm her hands were, and even said out loud about it. She laughed a little at this and said that she always had a high body temperature. When she nudges people with these hands, their bodies warm up and they start to feel better. After that, she suggested that he try it, and also promised that it would not hurt. Of course, Luca agreed. Ina also said that in her country, it is called massage. It is done to help people feel better. The girl suggested starting with his arms and shoulders, and also warned that he might like it so much that he would then ask to do it again. Meanwhile, she thinks to herself about how stiff his back is, and also imagined how much pain he was in all this time. His muscles definitely need help. Naturally, he liked everything. He closed his eyes, smiled slightly, and also hoped that it would last longer. The boy could barely speak how warm and pleasant it was for him. It was some kind of magic, and to experience it again, he was even ready to pay any money. In the end, she managed to teach him how to hold his back correctly. She asked him to try not to forget about it, and also that sitting for a long time is also harmful. You need to get up regularly and stretch. It's hard to believe, but Ina managed to teach him to combine studying with physical activity. For the sake of an experiment, they stuck to their usual routine for a week. And Luke looked completely different, so energetic that even the eldest prince sometimes did not recognize him. They constantly came to show him their improved grades, although the guy had already forgotten the last time he saw something like that. Naturally, he was very pleased, but still kept silent, as if there was nothing wrong with it, in his style. Everything was very clear from his red face. Luca knows his brother and also understood that he cares about this and that he is gradually beginning to be proud. This became clear when the older brother himself suggested going out onto the court and doing some fencing together. He didn't do this before because he didn't see the point. Luca was always tired and in a bad mood, but now it's a different matter. They both enjoy it. The older brother enjoys seeing results and success, and the younger brother sees that it is appreciated and is ready to do the best he can. While the brothers are training, Ina talks to Elise. She finds out if this is the same wooden sword that the elder prince once gave to the younger one. It turned out to be the same sword. It is still dangerous for a small child to wield a real sword, so the prince carved it out of wood himself. No one else has the same. She thinks that this is very caring on his part. She would never have thought that the eldest prince was capable of such a thing, especially towards his younger brother. Luca started learning much faster than before. Also, his appearance today is normal. Lately, he has never said something like, "I'm tired," or something else. Ina sometimes asks herself if she really is a saint, but she still thinks that it's not about that, but about the fact that for this world, basic care for a child is something incredible, so everything she does is called holy power here. Here it is generally accepted that if a person gets sick, he deserves it, and if he recovers, it is a divine gift. His Majesty suggested to stop training for today, and Luca asked him to stay for just 1 minute because he wanted to apologize for what happened the other day. He promised to try even harder to become like him. The boy dreams of becoming someone people will look up to, so he asks his brother not to leave him because he has no one else. The prince hadn't heard anything like that for a long time. He even froze in one place, probably didn't know what to say to this. Naturally, after such, any person will become softer. This is the most pleasant thing the guy has heard in his life. He is especially pleased to hear it from the person for whom he tried so hard. Gerald probably didn't expect this from himself. He hugged Luca and even began to hold back tears. And after that, he said these words, "I kept saying that it was for you, but in the end I put pressure on him, so I ask, move the way you think is right. Forgive me for trying to force my way on you. You are almost an adult. Live in such a way that you are happy. The main thing is just don't let people who don't deserve your attention get close to you. Unfortunately, there are plenty of them around, and you need to be wary of them." It was the cutest moment they've ever known each other, and it was also very nice to watch from the outside. Gerald turned to the saint and thanked her for healing Luke, and also apologized for his rude behavior. She replied that she should thank him for trusting her with his brother, and also hinted that all that was left was to trust himself. She did it as carefully as possible, so as not to ruin anything. Luca asked his older brother not to overexert himself, while wiping away tears from his happy eyes, which hadn't been this happy for a long time. Gerald replied that he was an adult, so he would be fine and he didn't have to worry about it. While no one had left, the girl decided to take advantage of the opportunity, came closer, and said the following, with all due respect. But in general, the prince also does not want to overexert himself. And all this is much more serious than he might think. And she also needs to discuss something with His Highness, and it would be better if it happens as soon as possible. While they were talking, at that moment, some girl was walking down the corridor. She noticed a prince on the street with some girl whom she was seeing for the first time and couldn't pass by. She became interested in what was going on there. She even stopped near the window to listen and find out everything. She looked at Ina and perceived her as her competitor. This is evident from her reaction, and not only, in general, the girl became very tense. And she also said out loud that she would never allow anyone to get close to Gerald. It sounded like the beginning of something bad. It's outrageous to her how that girl dares to try to get closer to the prince, although she doesn't know why they're even talking and why she's here. The first thing she decided to do was find out who she was, what her plans and intentions were, and if they interfered with her in any way, the girl would try to do everything so that the stranger would not stay here for long. It so happened that at that very moment Kane was passing by in the corridor. She thought to stop him, and she also didn't care whether he was busy or not. She greeted him, asked how he was doing, and smiled as if nothing had happened. But he knows her too well and already understands that she needs something from him. She couldn't just approach him like that. It's impossible. Meanwhile, the lady says that she just accidentally saw the prince from the window talking to a stranger, a girl in a white dress, and also hinted that if he knows who she is, he should tell her everything. At first, he wanted to tell everything he knew, but then he remembered some words just in time that stopped him. Moses had warned him before, one should never speak carelessly about Lady Ina. One can speak about her either with the prince or with the priests. There is one very good reason for all this, which must always be remembered, every second and moment while she is here. The thing is that if rumors start to spread around her, chaos will ensue, and nothing good will come of it. And it will be almost impossible to correct the mistake. The guy thought that Moses had warned him about this, but Lady Ira, the daughter of the chief secretary, he allowed the thought that perhaps she was allowed to know about it. It seemed to him that she was not one of those who acted rashly, and this meant that he knew her too little, or rather, did not know her at all. In the end, after the conversation, he asks that everything she learned remains only between them, and that no one else learns about it. and also that she learned it from him. What was her surprise when it turned out that the girl was a saint? But that doesn't mean that she changed her mind and won't be against her. She understood one thing. It means that for the prince, the lady is special, and this significantly complicates everything that she has planned. In short, she now needs her father to start marriage negotiations as soon as possible. She's not going to let some girl who came out of nowhere steal him away from her. Meanwhile, the saint hints that they need to spend time together and even suggested going shopping in the city. To which he replied that if she needed anything, he could order anyone to bring her anything. She tells him that she's just not sure that it exists in this kingdom. She needs to see the materials with her own eyes to understand if she can use them. It was the first time he heard that there was something missing in this kingdom. It even sounded offensive to him, but he didn't let it show. Ina said that she wants to make one tool for treatment that will definitely be useful and help many people. Moses can't wait to find out what she's going to do. He understands that it will be something unusual and even wants to follow her. In the end, after the story with Prince Luca, he and the lady secretly went shopping. But before that, they wrote a list of everything they needed to buy so as not to forget anything and not to come back several times. It seemed to them that there was nothing wrong with it, and the priest had a good feeling, and the girl felt it. Meanwhile, the saint had been devoting herself entirely to the creation of a healing instrument for the last few days, and he was constantly doubting whether such a wand could really help with healing, as she promised. He tried his best to follow the sketch, and now he shows it to her, so that the lady can appreciate how well he did. Ina said it looked great. Only at the end she asked to make the tip more rounded and then it would be just perfect. After this, the lady thanked him for always being on her side and always trying to help. Even when he doesn't fully believe in success, this is very valuable to her. It was nice for him to hear such words. He felt that she noticed his efforts and his soul became very calm. He also told her that if she needed anything else, she could ask him for anything and even more. After some time, she began to hint to him that it was already too late, and it was time for the two of them to rest, although Moses doubted that she personally would go to bed right away. She says that he has already helped her today, and she cannot demand anything more from her at such a time, and she also wants to thank him at the end. For example, with a massage. If he doesn't mind, of course. He says that of course it would be an honor for him. He remembers how he felt last time, and naturally he is not going to refuse. He lay on his stomach. She asked him to relax as much as possible and think about something pleasant, as much as possible. He is already anticipating how wonderful it will be. He is already smiling for no reason, and he doesn't care whether she sees it or not. His body is like in heaven, in the arms of the gods. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain what she does to him. He wants this moment to never end, or to be able to put it all on repeat. At this point, it is very difficult to try not to fall asleep. He tries his best, but it seems he has no chance. Meanwhile, the prince is in his office as always. Everyone knows that if someone needs him, he can most likely be found right here. He is now talking to his chief secretary. Harun reports that the economy in the capital and surrounding regions is stabilizing. Measures against flooding have also been successfully taken. But the northern border tribes are destroying the cotton fields, thereby disrupting exports, and this is a big problem. His Majesty says that it seems that the northern tribes are somehow connected with the tribes of other countries, which means that they should do everything possible to avoid a full-scale conflict. He promised to allocate more people and funding for defense, and also asked to give him more time for negotiations because perhaps something could still be changed and agreed upon. Garun is very happy with such a productive conversation. He thanked for the attention, was about to leave, but at the end, decided to ask if the gentleman had accidentally thought about marrying his daughter, Eri. This is apparently the same father, thanks to whom she wants to arrange her personal life. The guy promised to look into this issue as soon as he sorted everything out because now there are more serious matters and the rest can be sorted out later, especially since he is used to solving problems in order of importance. In that case, there is nothing holding the man here now. He goes about his business and the prince tries not to go crazy from everything that he has to decide, and in the near future. He doesn't care about his personal life now. He wants to cope with his initial responsibilities and then everything else. The secretary couldn't help himself. He closed the door slightly loudly. Only he was lucky that Gerald didn't pay attention to it. The man just left the office. He immediately got angry because he realized that now he didn't even have to remind the prince about this until he finished work. He wouldn't even remember about his daughter. Quite recently, the girl told him about her suspicions, and now the father thinks that the prince really is going to marry the summoned saint. They decided so, only because he has been communicating with her often lately. For them, this is enough. His plan to marry his daughter to the crown prince and then rise from secretary to minister and use the army to destroy the northern tribes is slowly falling apart. But Harun doesn't give up. He has some new idea. Kingdom of Freegold, northern city of Bangara. Usually there are a lot of people here from early morning who love to discuss the latest gossip. Some even come here just for this. Right now, some saleswoman is talking to a colleague about how the saint was recently called upon in the capital. She asked someone to tell her more information because that's all she has managed to find out. Her colleague also decided to share the rumors that had reached him, namely that she was able to heal any wound. Just at that moment, a guy was passing by the counter who was very interested in these words. He immediately turned around and approached that woman to clarify something. He became interested in who the saint was, how she differed from ordinary people, and of course the woman happily told him everything. Saint, this is a virgin who descends from heaven and heals all people, and also relieves them from suffering. If you believe the rumors, then right now she is in the capital. The guy thought that he had to bring her to their village. There were probably many people there who needed her help, especially for free. I wonder who he is. And judging by the patterns on his face, he is probably from some tribe. That's why he hides under the hood. After all this information, he decided to take a walk to think how to make the best of it and whether there was any point in asking her for something. Suddenly, she only helps a certain circle of people and no one else. Meanwhile, and these two are again gathered in one room, she shows them the tools that she wants to use for treatment. And even with this, she managed to surprise them, because they had never seen anything like this before. They still react to everything new like little children who have just begun to explore this world. Kane apologizes that due to his clumsiness, he was unable to help them, to which the girl responded that now he can do it, and he asked with surprise if she really needed anything else from him. Apparently, he himself did not expect it. Ina says that she has a task of special importance for him. He will be the first to test the work of these tools that they just created. To begin with, she suggests trying this stick on your foot. To do this, you need to press it on the center of your foot. In her world, this method is called reflexology. It is a massage of a biologically active point of the skin. When he touched her on his leg, the lady immediately asked him about his feelings, whether it hurt, to which he replied that he did not feel anything special yet. In that case, you need to press a little harder. She wanted to do it herself so that he would quickly understand how hard he needed to press. He said he wanted to do everything himself so he could remember better, and he put so much pressure on himself that he screamed throughout the room. Although he himself did not expect that he could hurt so much, it was really too much. Apparently, it would have been better if she had first shown him how hard to do it, and he would have repeated it. Ina did everything right and asked him to repeat it. Otherwise, he would hurt himself again. And the second time, it would be even more painful. She asked why he wasn't reacting at all. But he was sitting there with such a contented and enjoying face that it couldn't be described in words. He doesn't have the strength to do anything himself anymore. She did a foot massage so perfectly that now he doesn't want it to stop. Basically, for as long as she has been doing massages, the girl has always thought that it is elementary and she can teach it to anyone without any problems. Supposedly, you just need to repeat and that's it. But it seems that she really has some kind of power, because no matter how much people try, no one can even come close. Moses looks at this from the outside and for some reason decided to be indignant. He doesn't like that his subordinate doesn't even know how to use a regular stick, although he himself probably doesn't realize that it's not as easy as it seems from the outside. The guy also thought that everything was elementary, that there was no point in even studying for a long time. He looked, repeated, and everything was ready. But this is not quite so. Ina thought it would be nice to try improving the shape to make it more comfortable and also add some soothing aromatic oils for better sliding. He just heard something about such oils. He immediately decided to help her because he has one place in mind. According to him, it is perfect, and there is no point in going anywhere else because it has what she needs. He managed to interest her very quickly, and agreed without any doubts, especially since she is not against going to a new place. He brought her to the very market where everyone had been gossiping about her since the morning. What a coincidence. It's good that they dressed her in special clothes, although even if she hadn't, no one would know her face anyway. As soon as they got outside, the guy said that this was the northernmost market in the Kingdom of Freegold, and promised that she would like it here. According to him, these lands are thriving due to agriculture. Cotton is their main export product, but there are many shops selling fragrant herbs and flower oils. The girl noticed at the very beginning that the whole city seemed to be enveloped in wonderful aromas. It was simply impossible not to notice it. Kane suggests walking around the market and looking around to choose the best seller and what they need. They just started walking in some direction. They were immediately stopped by a female voice. The guy turned around, and there was that same secretary's daughter. Oh, next to her are two assistants with some boxes. What a terrible coincidence that right now and right today they ended up here at the same time. It's a pity that the saint doesn't yet know that it's better not to communicate with this person at all and not to get involved in any way, because it won't end well. The girl says that they have known each other for ages. She would recognize his back from anywhere, after which she asks what brought him to the northern city. He replied that they had come here to shop, and also tried to hint that they had very little time for all this talk. And then, the most important question was asked, is the girl next to him really that same saint? But before answering this, you need to think carefully. Ina felt very uncomfortable. Her body seemed to be telling her that this was not the person she should get to know. At this point, Eri understood everything and decided to introduce herself as the daughter of the chief secretary of Harun, and also said that it was supposedly a great honor for her to meet her, especially in such an informal setting. The girl acts like she's being nice, but she's probably already thinking about how to get rid of her as quickly as possible and switch the prince's attention to herself. Meanwhile, she asks what exactly they came here to buy, and Ina without hesitation answered that they were interested in essential oils. Although, perhaps, this was a mistake. Irie was very surprised and said that it was some kind of wonderful coincidence, because her family's trading house just happened to sell rare herbs, and suggested that they look there. Naturally, without suspecting anything, the lady quickly agrees and says that she would be happy to go there first, and also thanks for the help. Irie immediately asked the assistant to tell the manager to prepare for the reception of guests, and to do so as soon as possible. In that case, the girl asked to be allowed to see them off, and with such a smile that it was impossible to guess what she really had in mind. Every time the lady makes sure that no one can see her face, she smiles so sinisterly that it is even unpleasant to look at. It can't be that she would help her just like that. There is definitely evil intent in this. Now the main thing is that Kane is always nearby and is attentive, because only he knows this girl better than Ina. Without him, she herself will not soon understand who she is really dealing with. Irie spends every free second thinking about how she needs to get this annoying woman away from Prince Gerald as quickly as possible, because she is supposedly the only one worthy of being next to His Highness. Now they had already approached a huge mansion. They had to wait a little for one of the servants to come out to them. He didn't make a very good impression right away, but no one showed it. He tried to speak politely, thanked them for having come all the way from the capital, but it didn't improve anything. It just so happened that the girl was having singing lessons at that time, so she couldn't stay with the guests. She asked her assistant to replace her for a while, give them a tour, tell them what was what, and of course help them. After they all said goodbye, the assistant asked them to come in and promise to answer all questions. It is not surprising that after Eri left, even the atmosphere became more pleasant. And almost immediately, as soon as she turned away, meanwhile, the man says that he heard that they are looking for aromatic herbs. So right now, he offers to take them to the basement, and this is already the first alarm bell. Kane immediately suspected something was wrong, but thought to keep it a secret for now. Although the girl doesn't suspect anything, she listens attentively to the assistant, who says that since some herbs and oils have a strong smell, they store them in the basement to prevent the aromas from mixing. As soon as they went down a little lower, they immediately felt a sharp smell and doubted that it was even safe to be here. They imagined this meat a little differently. They thought it would be beautiful and luxurious, but in reality, everything turned out a little different. They stay here only out of politeness, and if it were convenient to leave, they would do so immediately, because the smell is truly unbearable. At some point, no one noticed that they were not alone here. Another man appeared in a cloak, who did not even cover his nose. It would seem that there is nothing wrong with this, but he suddenly took something sharp out of his pocket, began to threaten and ordered not to move. Otherwise, no one would leave here. Ina thought they were trapped and didn't even want to resist, but Kane deftly dealt with this villain in a matter of seconds. The guy thought that was it. All that was left was to find out what it was and calmly go home. But Ina was already in danger too. While he was dealing with his opponent, she was also attacked, but he didn't notice, and now he doesn't know what to do, because as soon as he lets one of them go, he will attack him again, and this will only make things worse. Kane even tried to talk to them. He asked what they were doing there, who they were, and what they wanted in general, because no one attacks people for no reason. At that moment, their boss came. He used some kind of device to make it so that the guy couldn't move. And when the girl screamed and got scared, she was asked not to do it, because everything is not as scary as it seems to her. She was promised that her friend would not die. He would just rest a little, but it sounded somehow strange. The lady realized that she was their target, but she still doesn't understand why she's arranging all this because if they needed help, they could have just asked for it. She usually tries not to refuse anyone. As a result, the people she came here with are lying unconscious. She starts to panic from the absolute lack of understanding of what awaits her next. Ina asks this man how he could do this because these people did nothing to him and almost cried. And then he suddenly takes her in his arms and says that she is the same saint that he only learned about today. She didn't have time to answer him. He had already ordered his assistants to immediately return to the village before anyone came. So she realized that, firstly, these people had entered someone else's territory and they had nothing to do with that lady's family. And secondly, they wanted something from her. The girl is afraid to say a word to them. Those people take advantage of this, and in the meantime, the prince miraculously managed to free himself early to talk to Ina. The guy was passing by the living room, heard some sounds, and thought that the girl was probably there. He knocked. Moses came out to him, after which the gentleman asked if he had seen the saint by chance because he had an important conversation with her. He says he has no idea where she might be, and then asks how he is doing and feeling. Gerald said that everything was fine, although he says so even when it is not. And after that, he decided to leave and promised to come back later. The priest saw a basket of fruit in his hands, after which he immediately understood for whom it was intended. Moses asked if he understood correctly that the gentleman was worried about the saint, after which he nevertheless asked to wait inside. For some reason the gentleman didn't think. He quickly agreed, looked where he could leave the basket and probably wanted to settle down on some sofa. He just approached the table, immediately noticed some documents, and then took a closer look and realized that this was probably somehow connected with Ina. The guy had never seen anything like this before, and he became very interested in finding out what it was and why it was so serious that he had to print out such drawings. And he also can't read what's written there, so the priest had to explain everything from the very beginning. He began by saying that this was a drawing of one of the instruments, drawn by the saint. She did not sleep at night, creating prototypes for His Highness. Naturally, he was pleased that this was being done for him personally. Gerald even blushed slightly. He was so touched. Moses realized that it seemed that His Highness appreciated the efforts and he himself felt pleased to watch it. At that moment, there was a very loud sound. Then they heard someone running down the corridor straight towards them. The door opens. The gentleman sees his assistant and can't even imagine why there is such urgency and what could have happened. Kane runs into the living room in a panic and says that he tried to think of a way to break the news to him in a gentle way, but something terrible happened. Some strangers kidnapped the saint and took her away to an unknown destination, and he was unable to stop them because he had been neutralized beforehand. While he was unconscious, she was stolen. He really didn't want to tell the master about it, but the prince should know about it. The assistant would hardly cope without him, because everything was apparently very serious. Meanwhile, the girl even managed to come to terms with and accept the situation. She is trying to communicate with them. Right now, she's saying that she still won't be able to escape from them and asked to get her back on her feet. The chief laughed, because if she went on foot, then at best they would get there by morning. And since the village was already close, he only asked her to behave normally. After which she had a question about where this village was and who they all were, because none of this had been told to her yet. The guy asks if the name means anything to her, the northern tribe, and at that moment she remembers the story of Moses that this is Prince Gerald's biggest headache. Ina asks why they need her because she thinks she has the right to know at least that much, and also hinted that she still won't cooperate with them after the horrible way they treated innocent people. The guy, no longer in such a kind voice, says that they won't let her go until she agrees to their conditions. After some time, he finally saw his native village and was even happy, as if he hadn't been there for several years. At sunset, this place really does look good, but it is not yet clear how safe it will be there after all. That is the main thing. As soon as they got there, local children came running to them who were very happy to see them, and they also called that guy a lord named Zane, thanks to which the girl at least learned his name because they didn't even tell her that. Ina felt very uncomfortable but still tried to pretend that she was happy to see these children. You never know how the guy would react if she showed that this was not the case. The girls ask who this woman is, to which he tells them that she is their important guest, and they think that she is probably his fiancée. Zane laughed and then even said that it would be great, which only made the girl angry. In the end, the girls ran home because it was too late and they usually weren't allowed to be outside at that time. Meanwhile, the guy says that they will go another way, but what she sees now does not calm her down at all. There are a lot of men ahead who look at them in completely different ways. Some are happy, some are the opposite and don't even hide it. One of them says that he can't believe that the Lord managed to bring the saint, and the other says that it could be a trap of the kingdom. With her help, they can easily find the village. He told them that they were deliberately going along a route that no one else could go along and said that he would personally look after her, so none of them had anything to worry about. And then someone comes forward and says that even if the leader decided so, he cannot fully agree with such a decision, and asked to at least prove that this is a real saint in front of them. At that moment, the guy turned sharply to the girl and warned that if she did not see them, she would simply be destroyed as a spy who had infiltrated the village. And now the choice was hers. After that, he pressed himself very close to her, asking her what she would do, hinting that it was useless to resist. It was better to just listen and do what she was told. And then she asks if they won't have problems if she dies, but he didn't expect that from her. He looked at her with interest and said that she was very brave. He was very unusual to see such character traits in girls. One might have thought that he would start threatening her, or make it clear that no one was going to joke with her, when suddenly the leader dropped to his knees and slammed his fist on the ground. Anna has no idea what it all means. She can only watch and hope to survive until the end of this day. Others also don't understand what all this means. They ask why he changed his behavior so abruptly. They even thought that he wanted to hit her for disobedience. But he says with his head down that he wants to offer his most sincere apologies for dragging the people she cares about into this, and also promised that as soon as they received help from her, they would return her safe and sound back to the castle. The guy made it clear that they really needed her help, and he was personally ready to apologize if he had scared her or been rude somewhere. Naturally, Ina couldn't refuse, because she was afraid to even imagine what would happen if she didn't do it. Here, they all went into someone's house. The leader is lying on his stomach. She is preparing him for a massage, and everyone else is watching this as if it were a performance. The girl asked him not to be shy and to always say, if he is in pain, it is very important. She just touched his back and immediately became embarrassed, because it was so pumped up that it was even unusual to touch it. The relief was visible on it, and it looked very beautiful. There is just one problem. Because of this, it will be much harder to knead the muscles because they are too hard. It would also be desirable to somehow soften the skin. She asked the others if they, by any chance, had any aromatic oil, because if they did, it would be great. They found some oil that they hadn't used for a long time, handed it over, and started watching what she would do next. Ina drips this oil right onto his back and imagines how pleasant it must be for him now. She herself wouldn't mind being in his place. The oil also smells very nice, but unfortunately, even with it, it will still be very difficult to massage your back properly. Of course, she tried to do the best she could because doing nothing was definitely not an option. At some point, when she had already warmed up his body, he felt incredible warmth and said that now he wanted to leave her here forever, so that she would do this every day. This is of course nice to hear, but such hints scare her. It could be that he is speaking seriously and thus testing how she will react to it. The leader said out loud, "Just think that in this world, all this time there existed such pleasure for which you want to pay any money." His complexion even changed. It became more pink and healthy, so much so that others noticed it too. At some point, the locals begin to realize that she is indeed a saint and begin to bow to her at the same time. This means that they finally believed her and stopped treating her like some kind of spy, like in the beginning. Their boss is very happy that she succeeded because even he himself doubted that she was capable of such a things. And people also apologized for doubting the master's decision and then asked how they could correct their guilt. Surprisingly, the guy says that they don't have to apologize because he decided to go through with the plan without discussing it with them. But he couldn't watch his brother lose his spirit any longer. At that moment, everyone froze in one place so as not to make a single sound, and Ina felt very awkward. She really doesn't like being the center of attention. Meanwhile, the guy says that he heard that she heals all the suffering, as if slowly leading to the fact that she should help someone. After all this, he directly says that he is ready to beg her, if only she would heal his younger brother. Everyone else also asked her to do it at the same time, because this is their common pain, which has lasted for many years. Now she realized that it was actually his younger brother who needed healing. She could only hope that he wasn't too serious. Ina immediately asked to take her to this man. After that, he immediately thanked her, and she says that it is too early for that. She hasn't even seen him. For this, he also took her in his arms. The girl had already forgotten that this should have been expected, but then she relaxed because now she knows for sure that for now nothing threatens her. Meanwhile, the prince is still trying to do everything possible to find out in which direction the saint was taken. The assistant started off by saying that he and the saint went to Bangara to buy aromatic oils and couldn't even imagine that everything would turn out exactly like this. Then he remembered that they accidentally ran into Lady Airy there. She offered to take them to her family's trading house, and that's where they were attacked. He remembers the faces of these people very well, but so far it won't help the case in any way. They don't even have information about where they are from. The last thing he can say is that while he was unconscious, the saint was kidnapped, and he could do nothing about it. He watched it happen, but his body didn't obey him. And it was just awful. It was the worst thing he had experienced in a long time. For him personally, there is nothing worse than hopelessness. The prince says that if they were able to neutralize him, there must have been good warriors there, and Kane thinks that it was someone from the northern tribes. They had two characteristic movements. Only he doesn't quite understand why they needed to kidnap the saint, because they could have addressed her simply with words without causing so many problems. Gerald at this moment thinks that everything has turned out too well for them. It's not bad that they decided on an impulsive kidnapping after learning her status. And after that, he said that, firstly, only a very limited number of people should know the saint. It is unclear to him how this information reached the north, after which he asked everyone present to put forward their ideas. The priest thought that it was important to clarify a certain point right now. Kane was talking to someone about this topic because he suspects that it might be somehow connected. The guy started to remember who he had spoken to recently, and it was only Lady Airy, so he told them. Moses understood everything at once. This is the worst thing he could hear from him now. He doesn't even have words to describe what he thinks. The guy starts making excuses that she is almost like a relative for this family and doesn't understand what's wrong. For the priest, everything is absolutely clear. The lady is too attached to His Majesty, and the fact that the attack took place in their family's trading house explains everything. Meanwhile, the prince says he finds it very hard to believe that the lady planned it all herself. Perhaps her father also helped. Meanwhile, the chief brought the girl to his brother's tent. Warned that his name was Hugo, he was one of the most skilled hunters of this tribe. But some time ago, he was seriously wounded. The wound itself healed, but he completely withdrew into himself. It seemed strange to her that she had healed early, but the person was still not completely healed, and in case it was a disease or infection, she would not be able to help in any way. Meanwhile, the boy knocked on his brother's door, asked if he was asleep, and said that the saint had come to heal him. He also said that she came from the capital itself to save all those who suffer, although this is not entirely true. The boy was very surprised by what he heard because he believes that such people do not exist and never existed. He said he didn't believe it and asked them to leave him alone, but they didn't give up and decided to try to interest him again. The brother said that it was true. He saw the power of the saint with his own eyes, after which the boy asked to prove that it was all true, which means they succeeded. Only he didn't mean to help. He asked for help in the plan to make sure that he no longer exists in this world because he was already tired of suffering. According to him, the best thing she could do for him was to take his life, preferably painlessly. The girl didn't think she would hear something like that today, and his brother was also a little scared that he was even having such thoughts. Then he came to his senses a little and began to be indignant that the boy was saying such things. Although, in fact, in his place he would have said the same thing. Then he ran up to him very quickly and promised that soon their life would change and everything would be like before. He only asked him to trust and not resist. Although there is nothing to resist, he will be very pleased. The brother said that he didn't care anymore. He agreed to anything, if only they would leave him alone and leave him alone. This look that the girl saw in him, she knows him too well, even too well. She immediately had memories. She had the same expression on her face once, when there was nothing good in life and nothing made her happy anymore. She woke up and went to sleep every day with the thought that she didn't need such a life, but she continued to live anyway. She knows the feeling of complete despair and really wants it to leave this child very quickly. It's very hard to talk to a person who doesn't want anything anymore and who has no desire to live. But she's not going to leave here, at least not without trying to do something. To begin with, she asked him a very difficult question, why he wants to die so much and talks about it so easily and freely. He replied that everything was very simple. The guy had recently been feeling like a burden and an extra person who had to be fed. It was unbearable for him to feel useless, especially so much. He also told about that very day that ruined his life forever. So much so that it was impossible to imagine anything worse. During a hunt, he fell into a chasm, and since then he has not been able to move his hand normally, and he also cannot even pick up light objects in his hand. At first he tried to hope and believe that everything would pass, but nothing has changed for so many years, and every time he remembers that day, he cries and cannot force himself to stop. At that moment, his brother came up to him. He usually knows how to persuade him, but for now he started by saying that the guy has been eating really badly lately, and something needs to be done about it. The guy doesn't want to hear anything like that. He even said that it would be better if they helped him leave this life than to try to treat a problem that can't be treated. The girl says that you can't give up like that because there is always a chance to get well, and she is here, in fact, for this. Personally, she advises him to just trust once, and if nothing works out, then she will never come to him again. She even suggested a bet. He only got more angry with her that she was giving him hope, while she probably had no idea what problems he had. Ina smiled because there was no point in talking about it. It was better to spend time on something that would speed up his recovery. She also said that she actually knows something, and judging by his condition, she can assume something. Probably his muscles are stiff so he can't move normally. If that's the case, then with time and careful care, he will definitely like it, and these are not empty promises as he might think. In her world, the girl took massage courses as part of rehabilitation. If she applied all this knowledge, she would most likely be useful to him. Meanwhile, she asks him how much he's ready to believe her, because if it is not so, then he will lose the only chance to save himself. She also has her own affairs, so she has no desire to force him here for long. After such words, the guy really thought about what if he checks whether she's a saint or not, because almost nothing is required from him, only consent and silence during the massage. When he began to look at her with a calmer gaze, Ina seized the moment and asked to let her take care of him just once, especially since it would be painless and even pleasant. And now the girl has finally decided to get down to business. She asks if she can touch him, to first check the condition of the body because without this she will not be able to do anything further. The elder brother immediately asked him not to be afraid, and just in case, he told him that he personally had already experienced the powers of the saint and could assure him that everything would be wonderful, so much so that he would really like it. The guy thought that the offer was really good, and since they were all praising her powers, it was worth trying. Ina was incredibly happy. She even blushed, as if it was she who was offered to improve her health, and not she. Just in case, the girl warned that if he gets hurt, he should say so right away, although there is almost no chance of this happening. As it usually happens from the first touch, she already felt his clogged muscles, which would not be easy to relax, and she also has a special mission. She must not do anything that he might not like. Her gaze must be confident, and her movements too. At that moment, she thanked her past self, because she had previously devoted so much time to this that even if her memory disappeared, all these skills would still remain, and her hands would automatically do what she had been doing all her life. At first, he was afraid that there would be unpleasant sensations. He even closed his eyes. And then he realized that she was already touching him, and there was nothing wrong with that. As it usually happens when she starts asking how the patient feels, the person can't find words to describe how much he likes everything that is happening now. For her, it was quite expected. But for him, all this feels and looks like something impossible, because his expectations were completely different. Ina thought to herself that he definitely liked everything, and she relaxed herself, because when a person sees that he is doing better, the fear of harming disappears by itself. Here she is already saying her conclusion, as she initially thought. His muscles are just stiff, and this is the simplest thing that a professional like her can handle. To help him, a simple massage will be more than enough. The girl promised that his body would gradually return to normal, and also asked him not to forget to eat and maintain a sleep schedule. The older brother looks at the younger one and finally calms down, as if for himself. And this is not surprising. It is clear that Ina would like to look after Hugo until he is fully recovered. But sometimes what you want is not always possible to achieve. She's worried about how the others are. From the first day, she wants to send them at least some kind of letter that she's okay and they don't have to worry too much, at least for now. Meanwhile, Gerald invited the girl and her father to his place. Naturally, after that, the thought crept into her mind. Is it really possible that now, when the saint is gone, he is going to make the long-awaited proposals? They had already entered his office. The man was the first to greet the prince and said that it was a great honor for him and his daughter to receive an invitation from such a respected and busy person. They expected that he would also be glad to see them, or at least say so, but his look says otherwise. At least one of them is already wary. So that they both better understood the reason for this meeting, the guy explained that since he was now very actively involved in checking all the information on the case of the kidnapping of the saint, he has a couple of questions for them. For example, do they have any guesses about the identity of the kidnappers who broke into the trading house? After these words, the father and daughter looked at each other to stall for time and think of what to answer. The man says he recently spoke to a witness, and according to him, one of the bandits was wearing a raincoat and had red hair. So there is a high probability that it was the same famous Zayin, the leader of the northern tribe. He also mentioned that, as the prince knows, this gathering of aborigines has repeatedly caused problems for the kingdom, and probably they want to use the saint as a hostage to negotiate on their terms. After which the gentleman said that he himself had come to the conclusion that this incident was connected with the northern tribe, and therefore he wanted them to take part in the liberation of the saint, if of course they wanted to prove that they were not involved in this matter. He also asked to be prepared in advance for the fact that they will have to stay in the palace for an indefinite period of time. They look at him as if he just told them that it was all their fault and they should admit it right now. The guy says that they don't know their true intentions, so every second counts, which means they have to make a decision quickly. He asks for the last time whether he can count on their help, hinting that if they refuse, they will later regret it, and at the very least will arouse suspicion. At that moment, the man thought to himself, "Kill two birds with one stone, whatever that means." Immediately after that, he put his hand on his heart and said that if this was his order, then he would carry it out without hesitation. Although he thought to himself that everything was going according to some plan, and even smiled slightly. Meanwhile, the saint was informed that her tent was already ready, although very little time had passed, and it was strange that everything had already been done. Only the prince would know that Ina is completely safe here and doing good deeds. But when a person goes missing, those who care about him usually imagine the worst-case scenario, and the last thing they think about is not worrying. And the tribe also prepared food and drinks especially for her. And if she needs anything else, she can ask for it at any time. She thanked them for everything they did for her, and said that it was definitely more than enough. Suddenly, when she already wanted to be alone, this guy touches her face and admires the fact that she's very small, like a bird. At first the girl was wary, then he moved away from her and she immediately felt better, literally instantly. When they were about to say goodbye and get ready for bed, Ina slowly began to hint that she should contact her people to tell them that she was okay. Ideally, she would like to send them a letter. And for some reason, Zane asked if the palace was by chance in the capital. Yes, she didn't have time to say anything to this, after which he remembered that it would take time. And they also had neither paper nor pens for writing, but if she really needed it, he would try to think of something. She thanked him for this, because she thought that he would not even listen to anything about it. Since she was so good at persuading him, the girl took a risk and started talking about a bath. But as it turned out, there were some problems with that. Ina first asked in horror how they wash themselves, and only after that he said that, of course, no one walks around dirty. There is a river nearby in the forest through which they walked here. They usually go there. Besides, there is a constant current and the water does not stagnate. Suddenly, the guy grabs her in his arms and offers to go there together right now, and she panics and doesn't even know how to react to it. Then he quickly explained that there were wolves roaming the forest at night. It was dangerous and he couldn't leave their guest all alone. Supposedly, you never know what could happen to her there. Ina felt terribly awkward and said that she would probably do without water for now, because going somewhere with him alone, in her opinion, was not the best idea. For the first time in all this time, the guy turned out to be too persistent, and apparently didn't even hear how she tried to refuse. In a couple of minutes, they were already in this place. He hid behind a tree so as not to embarrass her, but Ina still checks to see if he is spying on her. When she asked her once again not to turn around, he said one very awkward phrase, namely, that he didn't see there. It sounded terrible. The saint tries to explain to him that she is not used to this, and even when he really does not look at her, she cannot calmly undress and trust him, and she also hopes that he understands this. To which he says that people from the capital attach too much importance to clothes, although he understands that this will not change anything. At some point, he became very bored. Standing in one place and being silent, Zane spoke again that he heard that saints are being called upon and asked to tell how it happens. For her, this is also a very interesting topic, which she herself has not fully understood, but still decided to tell what she learned, what she saw, and how she felt at that moment. The girl clearly remembers and will never forget how I was suddenly enveloped in light from all sides, like fog. And then before she could even blink, she found herself in another world. These were indescribable emotions. The first thought that came to her mind was, "They all wish me harm." He was very interested to hear this. The guy imagines how difficult it was for her then, and even admired her endurance. Ina still does good in an unfamiliar world and has not done anything bad to anyone. although there are enough reasons today. The saint added that for some reason she could easily understand the speech and writing of this world, and the people in the castle were very kind, so everything was not as terrible as it could have been. The guy grabs his head and says that he kidnapped her, so it's definitely not for him to say this, but she's too kind. And if she was called here, then she probably wants to go home. And since she is still here, she probably just doesn't know how to do it, or someone is preventing her from doing so. The girl admitted that at first everything was like this. She only thought about it, but lately she increasingly likes to treat people of this world and wants less and less to return to where there were only problems. And sometimes it seems to her that she is capable of more here, and even if she is offered to go back, she will think about it. The guy asked just in case if he understood correctly that it was preferable for her to stay here rather than try to go back. She answers him that she herself is not sure of this yet, and she still cannot fully understand what she wants. And also the people from the capital are so kind that she does not want to leave them forever. If so, then he had a completely logical question. Did the country not call her to fulfill the duty of a saint? To which she replied that she was called to heal Prince Gerald and no one else. At that moment, he hit the tree with his fist really hard and said, "This means that all these tales about them taking care of the needy are a complete lie," as he thought. Zane got really angry. He was outraged that every time, instead of being tricked and deceived, the same thing applies to their lands, and those people are literally ready to do anything to get them. So they have been trying for many years to do everything possible to prevent this from happening. Based on these words, Ina understood only one thing. It seems that Zaina and his people were misled, and he just found out about it. The girl wanted to say something about this, but accidentally slipped off a huge slippery rock and plopped into the water. Lucky that it was not deep, and she did not catch a strong current. He was seriously scared for her, which is why he reacted late, but even a quick reaction wouldn't have helped him in the worst-case scenario. Lucky that she is okay, she somehow miraculously stayed in the same place and even returned to that very stone without any problems. All this actually happened very quickly, but according to their feelings, it was exactly the opposite. As if in slow motion, he started to grab her out of fear, and he himself doesn't know where he should and where he shouldn't, although he could have done without it. At this special moment, he decided to say important words, since she was able to help his brother. There was no point in keeping her here now, but to be honest, he really didn't want to bring her back to the palace. It sounded like a hint for her to think about it and stay with them. Ina immediately began to explain that even though he may not realize it now, in this way he would bring even more trouble upon himself. To which he said that he had already received what he needed, and also that his disappearance would not cause problems for the tribe. She says with frightened eyes that this is not the issue. She is grateful to all the inhabitants of the palace. They were kind to her. They even tried to find a way to return her home. He has only one phrase to say about this, which he was convinced of today. Namely, the inhabitants of the capital are only good at deception. They say that the first prince accused the second prince's mother of a crime for the sake of a drone, and sent them both into exile. For her, it all sounded as if they were speaking for different people. And there is still hope that the tribe does not fully know how it all really was. And maybe it is all true. Who knows? The guy said again that since he took up foreign policy, the lords of the northern lands have increasingly interfered in the affairs of the tribe. For all of them, the crown prince is some kind of curse. Prince Gerald may not like women, but he treats her fairly. And no words from anyone can ruin the first impression of him. She especially remembered the moment when Gerald admitted his guilt before Luke and was able to apologize to him. Also, the fact that he works from morning to night without days off for the good of the country while no one notices deserves special respect. The Prince Gerald she knows doesn't look like the man in the rumors that Zane and everyone else talks about. Some people just love to endlessly blame others for all their problems. Ina is not going to turn away from him just because of someone's nasty speculations that haven't even been confirmed yet. This time, she couldn't keep silent and said that Prince Gerald was a very responsible, serious, and straightforward person, and the one they had just discussed clearly had nothing in common with him. Zane looked at her strangely, as if he was talking to a child who didn't fully understand what was going on and what he was talking about. Since the girl had already started, she continued by saying that she had heard that he was trying his best to find a peaceful solution to the conflict between the tribe and the kingdom. No matter how strange it might sound to him now, Ina even tries too persistently to convince him that rumors are not always true. Even asked if he would like it if someone started spreading lies that discredited the northern tribe. And finally, she even decided to give him some advice that he clearly didn't expect from her. Namely, that Gerald and he should talk to each other alone. because something good could come out of it, if of course everyone tried to make concessions and stop looking at each other as enemies. As one might expect, he didn't respond to this, but he was clearly thinking about it, and that's already very pleasing. After some time, the guy covered her with some fabric because there was a wind and it would be more comfortable for her. Zane suggests postponing this conversation for later, and now it's better to go back so as not to catch a cold, because as he already said, they are not rich in medicines. And now she's only interested in one thing, whether she was able to get through to him, because if she did, then she did a great job. Meanwhile, the next day had already arrived. The saint had started her duties from the very morning, and 2 assistants were watching the door, who had been ordered not to let anyone in. This time, the guy didn't even resist, on the contrary. He waited for her and silently lay down on the bed to quickly feel what he felt yesterday. As soon as she touched him, he was already dissolved in this pleasure, so much so that he restrained himself so as not to make unnecessary sounds and not to embarrass her. Already on the second day, you can see how his muscles are starting to return to normal. It is now much easier to press the skin, which means she is doing everything right. Now he will be able to do light exercises. In general, the treatment is going well, but since that night she is constantly guarded, it seems that Zane was serious when he said that he does not want to return her anywhere. It would seem that everything is going so well, but the problem appeared out of nowhere and now it is really bothering her. If she fails to resolve this misunderstanding, he will think that she is happy with everything and will continue to move in the same direction. And she already understands perfectly well where this is all heading. Obsessive thoughts distracted her too much. Ina didn't notice how she stopped doing the massage, thereby showing that something was bothering her. Everyone here is too attentive. The guy immediately asked what happened, and she blushed and is afraid that everyone will understand everything. Most of all, she doesn't want to anger or offend anyone, so it's better to think very carefully before saying something so as not to say too much. The guy also noticed that not only she, his brother, had also been acting strangely lately, so he thought that something must have happened between them. He became interested in finding out what exactly so that he could help somehow, but she doesn't want to involve him in it. And then the manipulation begins. Supposedly, he read her thoughts, that you don't discuss such things with children, specifically so that she would start telling him everything. Under such pressure, the girl couldn't hold back. She told him everything as it was, and this is what the guy said to that. He also doesn't really like that the capital's people look down on them, but if his brother has decided on something, then he will never be convinced. They talked about it for a while, and then he got an idea. He wants to help her escape, so to speak, to thank her for the treatment. And now that sounds interesting. He promises that he will do everything quickly, safely, that no one will even notice. He just asked to trust him. Meanwhile, 3 people are working in the forest. They are not very happy with what is happening, but it is not customary to ignore orders. While they are walking, they try to distract themselves with different conversations, but so far it is not working out very well, because in such heat nothing helps. The mood is getting worse and worse with every second and with every step. It turns out that these 2 simply did not want to leave their friend in trouble, who needed to carry heavy objects over a long distance. They took the time to do this and are now pleased with themselves that for the first time in a long time they did a good deed. Meanwhile, they had already gotten back. It was the hardest work they had done in a long time, but still pleased with themselves because it turns out that there is nothing that they could not accomplish. They were immediately thanked for their hard work, promised some kind of reward for it, and this was very nice to hear. Meanwhile, their leader comes out into the street. He is surprised that the assistants managed to cope quickly. Only today, for some reason, he is without outerwear. They immediately started complimenting him that he had become even more handsome, and they also asked him a slightly personal question, whether this was the influence of the power of love. And they also suggested to the guy that what they had just brought was clothes for the woman with whom he had recently returned here. Zane admitted that this is the first time he has to entertain a girl, and if they have something else good in mind, he would be happy to watch it. The capital thought it all out so well that Moses and that guy disguised themselves as locals so well that not even one of them recognized them. Impressive. And since they managed to get into the territory, this means that the most interesting part begins. The main thing is that the saint herself recognizes them. The prince at this time, as usual, is still in the office. He has so much work that if he leaves here today, it can be considered that he did something unreal. He is very sorry that after so many days of searching, they still have not found out the location of the saint, but he has not yet recognized his assistant, that everything is much better than he expects from them. To keep their actions unnoticed, he deliberately left Lady Arian Heron in the palace. But he can't keep them here forever, so he can only hope that things don't drag on for too long. He only thinks about this because at the moment there's nothing more important to think of. He personally feels responsible for her, and nothing can be done about it. He thought about trying to somehow get into the work mode and finish everything as quickly as possible. But there was an unexpected knock at the door. You can tell from his face that the prince doesn't know whether to be happy or upset, because he has no idea who could be there at such a time. Just in case, he thought to get the sword from under the table, because in case of danger it would be too late to reach for it. This is also important to take into account. When he had already touched it, the door opened, although he had not yet said anything about the person behind it being able to enter. He managed to get there very quickly. The prince is very tense and really hopes that it is in vain. Although it was expected, today he could not imagine that she would come to him. Irie didn't even think to dress decently for him, and meanwhile apologizes for coming in the middle of the night and explains that they just need to talk urgently. And he doesn't even know how to react to this and how best to hide the sword, which is already in his hands and which she might be afraid of. He asks with a displeased face what she wants from him, because they have already discussed everything that could be discussed. At this moment, she seems to be deliberately approaching him and does it as unnoticeably as possible, so that he does not start to move away and think that he himself came so close to her. Suddenly, she says that it is very cold in the corridor. It is better to go into the room, but to say this, it was not necessary to touch. His thoughts at this moment, it is necessary for her and her father to remain in the palace as long as possible. Therefore, in no case should one of them be upset, and especially not refuse anything. He never had to do this, but for the sake of saving the saint, the prince is really ready to do anything and even humiliate himself in front of someone if necessary. For some reason, the girl thought that he would refuse right away. She started hugging him without explaining it in any way. Her behavior is so strange that in any other situation, he would have kicked her out long ago. But now he has to allow her too much. Irie started to tell him that she had a terrible dream, and it would be nice if he spent the whole night with her. Although everyone here understands perfectly well that it is not about fear at all. She's just looking for any way to stay in the same room with him for the night. But there's a limit to everything, and it's not clear yet whether he's willing to tolerate it. And the girl, with barely tearful eyes, says that in that terrible dream she lost him. So he has to agree. Otherwise she won't sleep for a few more days. She begs him so persistently that he already feels disgusted, at least by her naive voice. She keeps repeating that if he stays with her until the morning, she will be much calmer than without him. And she gently touches his face, hoping that it will somehow help. But if only she knew that now he is controlled only by the desire to help the saint, everything was more or less normal. But only until one moment when she began to cross all boundaries. She reached out to him with her lips. He immediately pushed her away and ordered her to stop because this was already impudence. Where is it offensive that a prince would allow himself to be kissed by anyone he wants? This has never happened and will never happen. He just said that if this happened again next time, she would never come into that office again, and that she would have to try really hard to talk to him. The girl squeezed her dress from stress. She already thought that everything worked out. But this is how it happens. The lady could only say goodnight and leave alone to her room. He thought he was too harsh, but it doesn't work any other way with her. Such people never understand in a good way, and if you allow them too much, they take advantage of it. The lady went out into the hallway. She felt terrible after all this. She was never usually refused like that, but next time when she wants to do something like that, she will think twice about how it could end. She literally can't wrap her head around the fact that someone, such a beautiful girl, refused her in this plan. She thinks that she has such an excellent pedigree. How dare he look down on her? Although he dares. He looks at her as he wants. Thoughts in her head? No. If you think about it, the situation is strange. It's as if she fell from the moon on us, and he just let her be nearer. And she also has a feeling that the girl is not a saint at all, and is only pretending to be one in order to get the prince. For her, she is a real devil in the flesh, who seduced Mr. Gerald, who may well intend to destroy the entire country. I wonder where she got the idea that everything could be like this. Apparently, a girl in love can come up with anything in pursuit of her own. Her immediate goal is to prove to the prince that he is letting in the wrong woman, even though she herself is not one of those with whom he would be better off. For her, the ideal is for everyone to know the truth. Although where would she get it from? Because the saint is honest with everyone, and knowing the Aerie, she can come up with anything. Create rumors that will ruin anyone's reputation forever. And in a matter of days, this is what she does best. Meanwhile, Ina is not bored. She has a new life here, so to speak, and so far she has succeeded in everything she wanted to achieve. The chief's younger brother goes out into the street calmly, and now he has much more strength than before she appeared in this tribe. He has a rested look. His movements are very sharp, vigorous. Looking at him, it is impossible to believe that just a couple of days ago he wanted to die and even asked the saint about it. She never ceases to admire him. This man is a clear confirmation of her own talent for her. Although for her, that very power is nothing more than just experience in massage. She even likes that they call her a saint. Partly she is not deceiving anyone because they themselves called her that. Every time they talk to him, his eyes light up with happiness that he finally got a taste of life, which he hadn't had for a long time. He enjoys everything he does, and this is the main indicator that his body is getting better. And also, since he is recovering very quickly, he himself reminded that he will have to speed up her escape plan. She is pleased that he himself remembers this, and that for him, it is still as if even more important than for her. The girl is simply afraid of angering someone, and even more so of being caught in the act of betrayal. For her, nothing worse than this can be imagined. She doesn't even have a rough idea of how he's going to do it. He didn't tell her anything, probably because if he told her everything in advance, she might get scared or refuse to participate. Meanwhile, the older brother approached them. Ina immediately began to tell that the guy had almost recovered, and if he didn't overexert himself, he would soon be able to participate in the hunt fully, as before. Now they are busy checking his movements because it can say a lot. Even if at first glance it seems that nothing special is noticeable, the girl looks closely every second. But as soon as the elder arrived, he also had to devote time. It's not clear from him whether he's happy or not. Today, he's not talkative at all. And it's a bit alarming, especially after their last conversation.